we're very pleased to have Perry Brendo. If you don't know what he looks like, he's there and here, live in the flesh. I'm going to let you introduce yourself further, but we're very pleased to have him join us today and guide our thinking and using data to make decisions. Perry?
Hey, Brian, I've been, we'll find out how. Wasn't quite that loud earlier. Is that okay? My name is Perry Brendo. I've been a member of the council for a little more than a year now. And I'll hear that tone, I'll scoot. I've been an evaluator on one of the teams already this year. So I have some of that with the group locally. My background is mechanical engineering. I've worked on a number of industries. Number one, General Motors industry. Okay, I start. That's what intros are for. But again, worked some at General Motors in the Pizza Labs in Detroit, and I guess one of the first places I saw using data, kind of an intense application. I took it through the space industry, into defense industry, most recently into medical device. I've been doing consulting locally in the Twin Cities for the last 6 years. Locally has included Italy, Russia, New Jersey. I tried to stay local and it didn't work out so well. So enjoy technology, tools like Skype.
Yeah, I think that's good.
They've taken me some of those places. So what I'm going to give you is actually, I'm going to share a conversation that I had actually with Beth New almost a year ago. I told her as a new member to the group, looking for people on particular topics, maybe I know someone that can help you out. And so she threw out a couple of topics, and I kind of brainstormed some people I might know. And she said, another topic that I'm interested in is decision making with data. And I bit my tongue and I said, I might be able to talk to some people. It depends what you're looking for. And we talked a little bit more. This presentation is that conversation, as close as I could. Because what I told her is, like I said, making with data is good. Several years ago, I actually taught a tool, which I'll introduce to you here at the end, called Design Experiments. I've taught it over in the grad school at St. Thomas Engineering Department for 16 years now. I started when I was 12. Just get that out of the way. But I've taught that there for a long time, and at one point I was part of a curriculum committee, and the name of the class that my name was assigned to was Decision Making with Data. You don't have to raise your hands, but how many of you have your day these days like this, where I say in the curriculum committee meeting, we talk about all these hardcore tools and all this great data and how we're going to make all these really rigid decisions. And I said, you know what, the class we need is decision making without data, because that's how I just spent today. And that's what I told them. I said, data's good, it helps. I'm kind of known as a numbers guy, kind of known as a tools guy, and that's not what we're going to talk about today. So if that's why you came here, I'm sorry. My mom said, as I was talking to her about this, I know a couple of you have spoke at these events before, and there's a little bit of pressure you want to do well. I was talking about this event. She said, I told her something about, people pay $2.50 to park. She says, well, then you really better be good. So with that, decision making with data, what do you think?
I'll give you what I
I my contact information on the front page here. I'm a huge believer, and I've already done it some here this morning. I believe in helping people. I believe in networking. I believe in just doing what you can for people. So if you have questions, want to shoot an email, want to give a call, I'll help people in any number of ways. Both strength and a weakness. So here's what I see as the current condition with decision making. There's obviously a current emphasis on Six Sigma. Everyone wants to get that data. They want to make that decision based on those facts. And I think that's an okay thing. Anyone that's totally seat of the pants will talk about that. I think has some weaknesses. Lean on the other side, I've kind of generalizing. So many of the solutions that are out there are obvious. They're already known. We don't always need all this analysis. It gets overdone a lot. You know, there needs to be some, you know, let's just think a little bit. But I think there are situations, a lot of situations that require balance. And that's the goal today, is talk about that balance between thinking and data. And I think either one exclusively is going to be a problem. Thinking I'm going to go with handheld. Even if is this working yet? Not yet. How about now? No? I heard a click. Is this one working? Is that a little bit? Okay. We'll give this a go. So the little bumper sticker at the bottom here says, not everything can be quantified ahead of time, not everything's obvious. So many people are data-driven, think that everything can be defined ahead of time, or quantified ahead of time. In my background, one of my other halves of my life, I do a bit of basketball coaching. Currently working as a varsity assistant at the Spring Lake Park with games tonight. There's a lot of data involved with that. I'll tell you, the emotion of the game, when you're in heat of battle, there's certain things that are working, and you just have to use it on instinct. You can't predict. It's a boxer. I think it's been attributed to Muhammad Ali. Everyone has a game plan until they get hit. Okay? I think you want to get that one too. Here's some things that I've heard people say. And again, bear in mind your background with data. Some of these phrases don't make sense. Just kind of read through them. But we create all these CPK reports, but we don't act, even if the reports are good. It's just generating data thrown into the file folder. Well, that's what the data shows. That's one of my pet peeve comments to hear. What do you think about it? What's your impression from it? The inspection went fine. The other one, we're still gathering data. I've always been under pressure for my decisions. And there's never, when you get enough data and you feel like you make a decision, that's okay. How many of you are able to do that? So why even use that phrase? I think that's insane. I always believe making the best decision with what's available to it. As a tool guy, I always got to be careful what I say and what I disparage here in public. But just how there's can be good tools, useful tools to get manipulated to get the answer that people want. And I've seen it firsthand in a lot of levels. Leave it that one at that for now. We don't have time for a science project, which kind of means we don't have any time for data or any information. We're just going to jump to a conclusion that we've already decided. And again, the bullet on the bottom. If you want these slides, I gave you some handouts because I think that's the highlights, but there's other things that you see. You want these, just give me your card at the end, I'll make sure an email to it. But at the bottom it says, based on and understanding the best available information at the time. And I think that's the right perspective on data and decision making. By the end of the day, we're going to understand all these terms. I just went through just some notes I had of kind of statistical tools or other kind of data-driven tools. And this is obviously a subset, but that's ugly. But those are all things that are out there. Each one really takes a specialty and some knowledge of to do them well or use them well. I'm not saying I'm an expert on all these, but those are things that I've used. So with that said, how are decisions made? That's really going to be the crux of this talk. Because it's not decision making with data that's important, it's the decision making. And it's decision making not just in your business world, but in worlds outside of that. And I'm not necessarily going to tell a lot of basketball or sports analogies, but I think if you kind of blend those two, I believe that's what shaped some of my career, is working in both, and a lot of lessons translate a lot. So I'll start really by talking about how decisions get made, and you will talk about that. I'm going to try and break things down by table or by some little subgroups. Then consider second today how the data gets used. Consider that data that's going to be getting used. I broke it into three categories: good data, hard data, good data but it's hard to obtain, and then there's raw bad data. And hopefully distinguish those. And then give you a few decision-making tools that I found most beneficial over my career. And because this is part of the Minnesota Council for Quality, I pulled out the business excellence category that I believe this topic fits in. It's category 4, measurement, analysis, and knowledge management. The core values that I think are part of this is management by fact, focus on results, and creating value. The ultimate part is the creating value part. Maybe before I get into that, give you a little more background on me to give you perspective. In my defense industry experience, I was working on a $1 billion project for the Army called Crusader. It's been since canceled. But when I was there, I had roughly when I left, I had about an $80 million piece of it, project personally, with design team out in California and another design team in Michigan. Part of the overall project, sometimes people say, well, take an act of Congress to do something like that. Well, it really did for us. There was requirements we were driven to that were in the congressional record. And I was part of a team because some of those requirements we couldn't meet. I was a part of, I think the team was about 8, 10 of us, that had to write a proposal that eventually went to Congress, changed congressional law to modify the requirements for our contract. So that's a decision, kind of at a semi-high level, on a big project that we really went to Congress for. So balance. Yes, data is good, data is needed, but if it's only to an extreme, something's lacking. People that work with me, that work with me for a time, realize about the people side that we're in. It's really looking at the motivation of people. I've actually studied motivation through my coaching hardcore for the last 3 years, and it's a challenging topic. Many people will dislike or distrust those that fly by the seat of their pants, but equally I think we should distrust those that only look at the numbers. And I'm starting to realize how long ago this was, but I'd read that as Enron. Their numbers were awesome. If you're really interested in some Enron stories, they're interesting. Catch me after. But there's some just incredible stuff that happened there beyond what people are aware of. I think there's something that's needed. I'll call it a smell test. And here's what I think people use data for sometimes that I see. They use data to avoid thinking for themselves. If that's what you're trying to do, is a smoke screen, it doesn't put you at risk. It wasn't your fault if it goes bad. That's what the data said. If you're using data for that purpose, that's not the point. I would prefer knowledge-based decision making, because I think data isn't knowledge. Data can bring you to knowledge. And so as far as this balance,
I have a little bumper sticker at the bottom that says balance at 62.7%. I think it's most effective. If you read that and think, oh good, I need to write that down, you're over-educated. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take just a couple minutes at your tables. Table's too big, you split up. If you're on the side, get at least a group of 3 or 4. I want you to talk about what the decision-making steps are that you believe that you follow, what would like to follow. I would limit it because I want to just do this in a couple minutes. But list no more than 7 steps. But just try to think about when you're making a decision, whether at work, at home, basketball court, whatever it might be, how do you make those decisions? Take a couple minutes to do that, and I have a flip chart to kind of compile everything together. Let's see if I can create chaos. One of the things that they've talked about in the meetings is this is opportunity for networking. One of the things that I found that are most effective in these kind of environments and these kind of talks, you tend to learn more from the people at the table than the person up front, at least when I do. And that's not reflected of anyone I've seen before. So hopefully I found that a little bit educational, just within the tables and the experiences. But to take just a couple seconds to compile some of the key ideas that you found within your tables, what would people say is the big first step?
Identify the problem and the issue for your issue.
So ID the issue. What next? So identify it and then define it.
Establish the right choices, right options.
So choices or options. Next. Resources. So called people and dollars.
Collect information, which is more than just numbers, data, what are the political issues, because they are sometimes. History irrelevant, but then look for data as well. Hopefully it's been clear.
And I like what you said, not just info isn't just numbers, it's politics, it's the situation, it's the history of the project. There's part of that situation as well.
Subset of define is identify how you're going to define success.
Yep.
Measure.
So define the issue, but also define success. And I would put it as the last step, because I think this is all goes pretty well here. Kind of the implement. You know, somewhere in here, make the decision, and then implement your decision. So I know, yeah.
Find a decision.
Define a decision.
Irreversible resource.
So everyone didn't hear that. A decision is an irreversible commitment of resources. Irreversible decisions, if you consider time a resource, you already committed. That was one of my biggest things as a project manager was, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but make decisions quick because the team's got to get going.
But no, don't make decisions before the time. That's a tough spot. I think we did pretty good talking about it. If you're really lazy, you were looking ahead. This is actually a hand up. That's why I didn't think it should take too long. But I also didn't want you to follow right in here. How I defined it, so this is how we're going to structure the rest of the way, but I think we're in line. State the problem or the opportunity. You have to identify it first, but that's all kind of part of it. Identify some alternatives. Evaluate those alternatives. Funnel down your choices. Existing knowledge. Design and conduct experiments. And within the knowledge is exactly what you were talking about, politics. I told you about the congressional decision we were making. You know, who's up for election, who's not. I mean, these were discussions we had. Make your decision and implement it. The thing is with implementing, some people take it as an all or nothing. You know, we're either going to make this decision and go in feet first or not. And you can certainly pilot things or ramp things up, try things out. If they don't work, modify. You can maybe call it a phased implementation. It's an opportunity to gather more information, gain more confidence as you implement that decision. So it's not just a digital, we decided to implement it or not. It can be a transition. So if we agree enough on that process, within that process, and I took that process, I think it's a variety of things. There's a ton of books out there on decision making. And that was based on my research of those books and what I thought was the best kind of simple yet comprehensive process. So within that context, there's the part of gathering data. We're going to focus more on numerical knowledge, type knowledge now to a point. But as I mentioned in the agenda, I break it into three, want to discuss it in 3 areas. Good data, hard data, and then bad data. Good data, and again, this is part of that defining success. Some sort of objective results or measurements that are good for a business, the foundation for improvement efforts. That's obviously good data. Information that leads to understanding and action. That's to me what knowledge is the ability to take positive action. To me, also, good data includes what I call windows of possibilities with probabilities. What that means, in the defense world, someone asked me how long, my Army counterpart, when he would ask me how long something was going to take, I said, what answer do you want? I said, it's going to take most likely 9 months. Bad things happen, could take 12. But I don't see it happening closer to 8 for a particular activity. That's a window. What's the probability or likelihood of those things? It probably will never be 12, probably never be 8. Kind of expect a 9-ish. But I'm not going to tell you 9, because now all of a sudden that's cast in stone. Now that it's still cast in stone, you have to be careful who you share those windows with, which side of the window they're going to take. Same thing with budgets. How much is this going to cost? 80 to 100 million. Well, how much is it going to cost? I don't know, but it's somewhere. If these things go back, it could cost an extra 10. These things go back, it could be an extra 5. And those were types of discussions you had to have, so it's not just yes or no based on a point solution. There's no point answer, so there's eventually a point answer, but going into it, there's never a point answer that's exactly going to happen. So that's what I mean by windows of possibilities. And to me, that's good data, because that leads to discussion and more knowledge of the situation than just a number. Statistics, I would argue, are good data, so long as they contain thinking and summary comments. I've worked with clients where someone will do some analysis on some data, and they will, honest to gosh, copy and paste the chart into the email, send that to you, here it is. That's all they say. And, and kind of their attitude is, well, if you're a smart enough person, you should be able to look at this and figure it out. Yes, if I had ample time, I could. I don't have ample time. Tell me what you thought you saw. Because if we see something different, that's going to be a good thing.
Tell me what you saw. So a chart without words is useless. Words without charts is useless. Charts without numbers are useless, and vice versa. You need a blend and balance, and again, 62.7% balance. The last one I put up here, product performance. Again, I'm a mechanical engineering background, but I've worked in all kinds of fields. When I talk about product performance, I'm not necessarily thinking just hardware. It can be a service, because that's obviously what my business is about as well. But you can have some pretty good performance metrics as well. Important data, but hard data. Requirements. How many customers give you well-defined, well-thought-out requirements? But it's important. So how do you deal with that? When I was doing work with Boeing on the 747-400, they gave us a book of really well-thought-out requirements. Some of them didn't make any sense. But we had a reminder of requirements from Boeing that we were expected to follow unless we could argue with Boeing why it didn't make sense. And we did argue with Boeing why it didn't make sense. That's part of our job as a good supplier to help understand their requirements. So it's important, but that's hard to get. Sales information. Obviously very good to project that and forecast that, but how are you going to be accurate with that? Again, one of those window opportunities. Same thing with budgets, schedules. And again, I'd ask my customer, I said, obviously I know you need to, with the Army, obviously you need to float a date up to your management. Which one do you want to float? The one that we're 90% going to get, or the one we're 10% going to get? You know there's a window, I know you need one date. When we can push, but it's going to be a 10%, or I can give you a different one, and we'll still push, but it's going to be a different kind of push with likelihood of actually needing it. That's a conversation I had with my Army counterpart. If you're not familiar with QFD, stands for Quality Functional Deployment. It's kind of requirements-related, customer-related tool that I've used before. If you think of it as a prioritization thing, it's really relative scoring. When I worked in the defense industry, we were actually mandated by the Army not to use it because of misuse within our program in the past. I hadn't heard that when I used it, and I used it obviously in a slightly different way. I was warned, and I was actually threatened by a number of people not to use it, but it was a way to make decisions. And when I brought it in to the Army for a particular decision we were making, their feedback to me was this is how all decisions should be made. And yet they were actually mandated us not to ever use it. So it's important stuff, it's good stuff, it can be really hard, it can be really controversial. Bad data. Again, point solutions. When I was doing interior ballistics development in the defense world, I always told people my gun testing was plus minus 100%. Think about what that means. Sometimes you push the button and nothing really happened. I gotta remember the phrase. Sometimes we push the button and go plus 100%, which would achieve a world record. It also would stretch the gun tube permanently, which was undesirable. It wasn't ours, it was the Army, so we didn't really care. Actually, the Navy, sorry. But there was another event that happened if you went that plus 100%, which they called rapid disassembly of the gun, which we observed a few times as well. And that's where we were at. We were in R&D. What's the answer? The only time I did probably less than 1,000 experimental gunfires in my career. The only time I was accurate was when the hardware failed. So that was a humbling experience. I kind of mentioned this already. To me, part of bad data is when only data is provided without thought, without any kind of logical support. Again, a table or graph is data. It's not really knowledge yet. And data just is numbers without a chart that makes it come to life. It's also not real good knowledge. If you're familiar with failure modes and effects analysis, if you use those as absolute numbers, I think that's a weakness. The big three automakers have a directive on how to use FMEA, and their most recent edition of that. They used to have a hard line of what was acceptable and not, and that's disappeared in the most recent version. That's about 2 or 3 years old. So they're starting to realize these things are relative measures. Return on investment at the bottom. Just kind of keep in mind that most of the decisions have a lot of emotion, a lot of people side to it. It's way beyond the numbers. So I just want to think about within the context of that decision-making process we talked about. Some examples, some data, and then kind of discuss if you think it's in that good category, bad category, or the hard category. And I'll give you one example, and this was more, it's kind of, I guess it was in the implementation part. We were getting the defense industry. We were trying to measure progress of suppliers to us of new product development. And one of the metrics that they put out for us, or was defined, we're to measure the progress of the design based on how many drawings they've completed. How many think that would be a good way to measure design progress? I mean, it's logical, right? And so this particular vendor would put these drawings in an electronic database, and someone from accounting would somewhere add up how many were done, how many you're supposed to have, and that percentage was their progress, and that's how they got paid. How many were audited the database and found out that many of the drawings were blank when they were submitted, and that's how they got paid. So something that sounds good can very easily be manipulated to be bad. And that, I forget the dollar impact, not necessarily that particular one, but one related to that, but certainly 6-figure kind of sneaky stuff that people would do. So let's just throw in a couple examples. Maybe something as you're stating a problem or identifying an opportunity, maybe something that's good data, bad data, hard data. Any thoughts? Actually, what I'll do, I'll jump ahead. I got answers here too. Yield data from production. You know, we've collected data for the last year. That's our yield. Though in August we changed to a different fixture. Well, it's all compiled together. Did this include the bad data or not? You know, prior to that fixture change. Market opportunity. That'd be hard data. Talk about requirements, expectations. Maybe as you're identifying alternatives, how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? Those kind of questions. Good data, but it's hard data. Evaluating the alternatives that you may have, whether it's development or research type data. It's difficult to know that it's good data. I've been working on a project right now for the last 2 months. We still can't measure anything. It's also because I have a client who is a customer who is a final customer, and we all think we know how to measure it. We can't. None of them can yet. And to me, this is, I mean, there's data during the making of your decision, but also this last step during implementation. Define the metrics to track your progress. Did the decision take effect? Did it take hold? Is it really going to stay? And there's a lot of people side to that, but also there's some metrics and data side to ensure that you're tracking that. I want to do another quick exercise. I want you to think about at your tables about a recent, I'll call bad decision that was made. Just a decision that didn't go the way you thought it should, or maybe how it would. And it give you some things on the screen here to think about. Did you use data in that decision? Where did that data come from? Was it good data, hard data, bad data? What was your gut telling you ahead of time? You got to be careful of making data fit your instincts, but at the same time, if you're kind of honest with yourself, that can be good. What eventually happened in that decision? How did your decision-making process compare to what we presented and talked about up here, as well as what's on your handout? And then any quick or easy steps of things you do different next time.
make that decision-making process better. So take, again, about 3 minutes or so, chat around the tables about that, and we'll reconvene. I started with consulting business 6 years ago now, full time. Sure about my whistle. When I started my consulting business 6 years ago, one of the things I did is I formed basically board of advisors for my group. And one of the things that one of the members told me, maybe it's a year ago now, she made a comment, because this one particular member used to work for me when I was in the corporate world. She made a comment, she says, I noticed the brilliance of little things Perry does. There's a lot of little things that he does that seem subtle, and I do nothing subtle. I do nothing by accident. We did that, and I made it look like I was getting water, because I was going through listening to what people were talking about, so it wasn't just to get water. Any big comments or observations you want to throw out from that discussion? Yeah. Everyone's got a gut feeling. I would agree with that. If the data doesn't back it up, what do? You able to change it? Make up the data. Change the standard one.
It must be that data point.
And I think that's what I find that I do, and I don't know if this makes me unique or if I'm typical, but I'll be in a situation, people have their gut instincts, and the biggest thing I try and do, and this is going into R&D and medical device and implantable electrosensitive stuff, plus guns and interior ballistics where people die, people have through our testing. But you have that gut instinct, you get some data, which to me, I have to be very flexible and very quick to admit, apparently I was wrong. But now, why was I wrong? And that's the knowledge piece. I think I was wrong because of this. Or I just don't believe that data. That data isn't supporting it, but I just absolutely don't believe it. Then why don't you believe it? Well, then run that test again. Gather more data. But if it continues to be the same answer, you have to change your opinion. And that's the part that's not easy. But if you violate your gut instinct, I think more often than not, you're going to be in trouble. But those first impressions, particularly when it's a non-personal thing, those first impressions oftentimes are right. But sometimes people have that first impression because that helps their bonus, or that's what they know their boss wants to see. It's kind of in some of the tools I'm going to show you that this back in the day when email was semi-newish, but could have been used. But I decided to use fax instead. I had a design team up in California doing some work for me. And on the cover page of the fax, I said, I think option C is the concept we need to pursue for this design. And so the next page, I had option A, and I sketched some things up. Next page, option B, and I had some things sketched up, and I faxed it to them. And I had page option C. And when they got it, they said, option C, you recommended it, but that page didn't come through the fax. I said, no, I think it's fine. Well, what did you see? Well, I saw option C at the top, but there's no picture. I said, no, that's your idea. Because if you take my 5 minutes of management oversight direction, and you're going to spend the next year and a half working on this, you better come up with something better than I can start with this fax. That kind of got the impression that if you take ownership, here's some ideas, here's my instinct, but if anything looks like this, I'm firing it. I mean, it wasn't quite that dramatic, but think for yourself. And all of a sudden, that team just ran it. We did a 3-year project in a year and a half, delivered, and it was $7-8 million project.
Data thoughts, these are in your handout. As you're at data at any part of that decision-making process, why are you collecting the data? What questions are you trying to answer? You should only be collecting data to answer questions. So what's your question? Get clarity on your question. It's somewhat with this identifying the issue, but the issue isn't always in the form of a question. If you understand the question and the things that you need knowledge on, that'll really focus your data gathering and your honesty about, is that really providing that answer? I sometimes will do in complicated situations, create an analysis plan. Before I collect the data, here's what I'm planning to do at the end of it. If I can't make a good story, then they don't have to collect their data. I need to create a good story for what I'm going to do with it so they know to invest and collect that data. If I can't create a story, we're going to save a lot of time. And with that also includes an idea of things you want to look at, tables and graphs that you plan to generate. Excuse me. All data needs interpretation. We talked about that. Analyze it, summarize it, interpret it. Do the best with what you have. That was part of that decision made without data that I was talking to Beth about a year ago. Yeah, we don't have all the data necessary, but based on what we have, here's how I think we're best, most confidently, not high risk, but most confidently going forward. Being right and late is worse than being close enough and on time. And this is coming from a data guy, at least what people consider to be a data guy. Don't throw it away because the data's not right. All data is wrong somehow. But how's it useful? How's it potentially wrong and misleading? There's a point I want to make on that, but I'll do it on another slide. Data required to make a decision. And again, this is what questions do we still need to answer? There's certain questions we already have information and position on, be able to make a decision, but there's additional questions left unanswered. Focus there to generate new data. I want to get to the Dick Vermeil story. I heard him speak at a conference years ago, and it wasn't about coaching, but one of the things that Dick Vermeil said, and this was after he won Super Bowl with the Rams, he said, I believe it is most NFL teams give out their game plan on Wednesdays, and then they have their games on Sundays. He said he said, winning the Super Bowl doesn't make me the best coach. He said, but what I did, he said, I always gave out our game plan on Tuesday. Not because I was quicker or smarter than any other coaches, but I figured a bad game plan in the hands of my assistants a day sooner gave them the ability to make a good or a great game plan. He said, so he didn't expect he was ever going to have a perfect game plan. It's all going to be different once you get that first hit. But let's get a reasonable game plan in place and let the team follow work. And that was the Dick Vermeil story. So what they need decisions on, are we going to do this or do that? Well, let's decide Tuesday instead of Wednesday. Give him an extra day of prep. And he thought that made a big difference for a team. Not because he was brilliant and they had a better game plan, but he didn't get much better by Wednesday than it was on Tuesday. Both were wrong. Here's some thoughts about decisions. There's no perfect decisions. So again, the Dick Vermeil story. Consistency in your decisions is important. Well, my teams always knew if I made a decision, they could act on it as they walked out of the meeting. I wasn't going to change it a week from now. How many of you, and you don't have to raise your hand because the boss might be here, or how many of you have ever left a meeting with your boss and they made a decision, you said I'm going to give it a week because it'll probably change and I'm not going to waste a week. Then when they come to you that week later and say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to make this change, you go, oh my gosh, I've already put in a week, but let's see if I can readjust. And I used to do that. There are certain bosses. I wouldn't touch it for a week. And then I would make them feel as guilty as possible for changing their mind. But I'd save a lot of time because I never even started. Consistency in your decision. Vermeil's game plan didn't change much from Tuesday to game time. It stayed the same. There are times to change your mind, but change very carefully and have very good rationale for it. Toyota talks about in their product development process, make your decisions slowly, but that's more the point of don't make decisions before they need to be made. I believe making decisions fast and changing them slow. Things you worry about settle, some come true, but on the other flip side, things you don't worry about, assume is going to be fine, those do bite you. All numbers are wrong, all numbers are distorted. I had a friend that took an MBA. In fact, he just connected with on LinkedIn. I haven't talked to him for at least 15 years. So I'm interested to chat with him again. But he said he took an MBA class. One of the instructors challenged everyone. Any newspaper article, and I think anything written, but they just use the newspaper as the example, anything in the newspaper with a number in it's wrong. And the professor challenged any student to bring in an article that was accurate, 100% accurate. And that instructor could find some way it was incorrect. And not because he was brilliant, but just the way he was thinking about the data and the information. And that buddy of mine told me that early in my career, and I've been thinking about things that way ever since. So this is also part of your handouts. Some tools, and I know we want to wrap up. I was aiming to wrap up at 5:02, and we're already 3 minutes to. So I'm going to just go through this fast. If you have more questions and want these, just give me your business card. There's a pair comparisons decisions matrix I think is a good, useful tool. Again, can be manipulated and used. Most tools are. A few concept selection tool, and then a little bit about design experiments, which is kind of my thing. This decision prioritization, you have these different requirements, A through D. You score them. Obviously, how does A compare to A? It's the same. B is twice as good as A, C is half as good as A, and so on. The next page fills in the reciprocal of that. You sum up the rows, the highest score is the most important thing. Maybe you've seen that. I think that helps decision making. Obviously, someone's going to come back through here, well, I didn't like, I'd rather have C win than D, so let's change the 4 to a 3 and the 3 to a 4. And yeah, you can do that. Don't. This one, it's called Pew Concept Selection Tool. And in some of the Design for Six Sigma classes that are taught, people use this. I was using this before that, and I used this for some fairly high-level decisions with the Army. All you're looking to do here is you look at your requirements, and everything's so-called equal. You either get a plus because it's helping, a minus because it's not, or a 0 because it's kind of indifferent. You have all your ideas, most of them bad. This is how I control the Army a little bit. Army's idea was H, and they go, well, geez, how does that one add up? And I would just add up how many pluses in that column, how many minuses in the column. The best column in this case is 4 pluses, 0 minuses. D is deleted. And I did with 0 data analysis. It's all kind of that opinion gut feel. And what used to happen is we'd take 2 months of analysis, get to a decision, here's what we need to run with, and then the Army would come back and say, what about option H? And I want this analyzed at the same level as everything else that you did on that other decision, which is how you want to go forward. And we'd have to spend 2 months analyzing something we knew in our gut was wrong, not going to work. This is how I got around that conundrum. Again, it's how I did 3 years of work in a year and a half. Composite-based armor for a drone vehicle, first-time number. So that's 2 of those 3 tools. The last one is design experiments. It's basically a way to collect inputs and outputs, or inputs impact on outputs. So there's some kind of crazy stuff you can do with it. I've been using this. This I learned at the General Motors Research Labs back in the mid-'80s. And the idea is if your inputs are A, B, and C, and you get way more complex than this. It's how you need it to be. It's what you use. But A, B, and C are inputs. You can do them in multiple conditions. This shows a very simplified 2-level situation. You have your different responses or outputs. You do it in a structured matrix. Generate that data to answer the questions that you have at hand, and then you can analyze it and do some amazing stuff. What you'll end up finding is not picking one of those 8 options that you tested, but you'll pick something in between. It's a blended solution. We did this at General Motors on a new paint line a year before the factory existed. We optimized the lab, rolled it out in the plant. First time ever, the GM rolled out a new car without paint issues. And there's a little bit about what they can do for you from a project point of view, solving long-term problems, doing competitive analysis. And I've coached hundreds of projects in that space. So in summary, gave you a little intent to some tools. And you really need to understand that big bubble chart early on, understand the intent of those tools, Know the history of your raw data, the history of your situation. Know the intangibles. Listen to your intuition, your gut feel. Also be very concerned of watching for unintended consequences. That's one of my big phrases I've been using. The data can point, and it's always wrong data. Hopefully it's useful, but beware of unintended consequences. So with that, again, contact info here at the end. We have a number of things that are on my publications page on my website. If you have any questions, again, if you want the slides, Dr. Card, I'd love to say hi to you at the end. Thanks.
Well, thank you for coming today.